This lecture accompanies the Plumbing C36 Trade Manual. Your instructor is Jack Creel, a licensed plumbing and general building contractor with over 20 years experience. Jack will review the manual page by page. Be sure to have a pen and highlighter ready to take notes. We will begin with properties of water located on page 9 of the manual.
This is the general knowledge portion of your plumbing trade manual. We are going to be selecting certain parts of it to study and highlight. But I want you to read the whole manual. All of it is important. Let's go ahead and get started on page 9. The properties of water. Now, these are some basic facts of water. Read over this whole page. Pay particular attention to the second row of diagram there, where it talks about 1 cubic foot equals 7.48 gallons. That's a very important item. You may well see and need that on the test, the state exam. Read over that, and let's go on to page 10. Tools and materials. Let's highlight that very first sentence. The copper pipe and flexible tubing used by plumbers is manufactured in 4 different wall thicknesses or types: K, L, M, and DWV. Type K has the heaviest wall thickness. Type DWV has the thinnest wall. Read over the rest of this and note on the bottom of the page there's a good chart giving you the different types of copper tubing and pipe and their color marks. Know their color marks. You may well see a question on the state exam asking you what is the correct color for this particular type of pipe or that particular type of pipe. Let's go on to page 11. I'm going to talk a little bit about plastic pipe. I'm going to read the first paragraph here. Plastic pipe is highly resistant to corrosion and is very smooth, which reduces friction. Make a particular note of that, reduces friction. Plastic pipe is more flexible than metal, but has a much greater thermal expansion. Several different types of plastic are used to make pipe. Read over those 6 different types there and understand the difference. And let's take a look at the last type listed, ABS. I want you to highlight the last sentence in that little paragraph. ABS is used for interior sanitary installations, irrigation systems, gas distribution, and so on. Let's take a look at cast iron pipe toward the bottom of the page. That first sentence is quite important. Let's highlight it. Cast iron piping is used in buildings for DWV piping. It is also used for storm drainage from roofs, for water main piping, and for natural or manufactured gas mains. And read over the rest of those 2 paragraphs. Now let's flip over to the next page, page 12, pipe fittings. Now these are the terms used by the state exam. Make sure you understand the fittings are called by these names. You may have some different names, that's fine, but you do need to know these names for the test. And let's move on over to page 13. We are looking at valves. These terms are the terms that you'll find on the state exam. Get familiar with all of the terms. And then let's take a look at wrenches in the middle of the page. I want to pay particular attention for a minute at strap wrench. Note that it is used when working with polished pipes. You may see that question on the state exam as well. Read through miscellaneous tools at the bottom of the page. Let's go on to page 14. Pipe cutting and bending. I'm going to have you read over on your own this list of tools. Understand how each one is used. And then let's take a look at architectural scale. I want you to read over architectural scale. If you're familiar with the architectural scale, this will be a good little review. If you really haven't worked with one, you do need to practice with one. As I say, read over this, understand what it's saying. Let's go on to the next page, page 15. Soldering and brazing. Soldering and brazing are used to connect piping and tubing to fittings. It's a basic statement. I'll have you read the rest of that paragraph on your own. On this next paragraph, this is quite important. Let's take a highlighter and mark most of this. The second sentence beginning brazing is sometimes, that's quite important. Let's highlight that. Brazing is sometimes referred to as hard soldering or silver soldering because it uses filler metals with higher melting temperatures, such as silver. A brazed joint is stronger than a soldered joint. Read the rest of that paragraph on your own. In the middle of the page, there's a couple of paragraphs dealing with the method of soldering and brazing. I'm going to have you read over that on your own. It should be pretty much a review. Take a careful look at filler metal. Note the difference between the different types and how they're used. Tin and lead, tin and antimony, silver. And then let's go on to page 16, oxyacetylene welding. Read over the first third of that page right there by the diagram. Take a look at the diagram. And then right after that diagram, in the text there's a sentence that begins, there are a number of safety procedures. Highlight safety procedures. And I want you to review on your own those 10 different safety procedures. You may see one or two on the state exam, so you want to be ready for them when you see them. And then on to page 17. Take a look at the different types of flames, the neutral, the carburizing or reducing, and the oxidizing. Be able to identify those. Again, you may see a question on the state exam in regard to those. Let's go on to the next page, page 18. At this point, we're going to start covering things a little bit more in detail. We're starting with the California Plumbing Code, and these are the summaries of code requirements that tend to occur on the state exam. Let's take a careful look at them. In the middle of the page, there is a list of some 7 different types of pipe. The 5th type of pipe, a 1.5 inch or smaller copper tubing. Note that that needs a support at least every 6 feet. Read over heating coils. And on ejector pumps, let's take a few minutes on that. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and highlight that first sentence. Ejector pumps must have a minimum discharge capacity of 20 gallons per minute. So highlight that. And this next bulleted item, let's also highlight that. Ejectors must have a backwater or swing check valve and a gate or ball valve installed in the discharge line. The gate or ball valve must be downstream from the backwater or swing check valve. Highlight that. Let's take a look on page 19, plumbing fixtures and fixture fittings. Take a careful look at the diagram on the top part of the page there. Understand that your minimum distances from the sidewall are 12 inches. Between each urinal is at least 24 inches. And more or less in the middle of the page, there's a sentence right next to a bullet that says, a floor drain is required. Let's highlight that. That's an important piece. A floor drain is required when there are 2 or more toilets or a combination of 1 toilet and 1 urinal. In underground installation, you'll note that we have 4 bulleted items on the left. Those are pretty much the same thing that is in the diagram on the right. So read both carefully. And on the bottom of the page, we have a diagram on the left showing the burial of sewer pipe and water pipe. And on the right, there's some text. I want you to highlight that text. Let's start with when a sewer line. So let's highlight when a sewer line is clay or other material that is not approved for use within a building, a water service pipe can only be installed in the same ditch as a sewer line if it is on a shelf of undisturbed soil at least 12 inches above and 12 inches to the side of the sewer line. Now look at the diagram and note that that 12-inch minimum is not from the center to the center of the pipe, either horizontal or vertical, but rather from the outside of one pipe to the outside of the other pipe, such that you can be able to put a 1-foot ruler between the two, either horizontally or vertically. And let's flip over to page 20. California Plumbing Code, or CPC, fill-in exercises. The following fill-in exercises are designed to familiarize you with specific requirements of the plumbing code that are covered on the C36 trade exam. Now, as we go through these exercises, these fill-in exercises, we're going to be referring to this first, second, and third diagram here. At the top here, what we call an isometric sketch, and then the two charts right below it. Let's get started actually on page 21. And the first question is in regard to size of drain and vent piping. The total number of fixture units at A is, now we need to look back over to the chart here in the diagram, and we'll find A in the bottom left-hand corner, and it's referring to the vertical pipe that is coming up and serving tank-type water closets. So that we know just by the diagram that that's going to be a drainage pipe. So we look at drainage fixture unit values. We're trying to figure out what the unit values are. We come down the list. A fourth in the list there under type of fixture is water closet. Private, 1.6 gallons per flush. That is 3 fixture units per installation. And by the diagram we actually have 2 installations, 1 on each side. So we would count 3 for one and 3 more for the other installation of the unit. We have a total of 6. The answer we should put in at question number 1 is 6. Let's go on to number 2. The minimum size pipe permitted at A is, now we go back over to the other page and we look on the bottom chart. We're going to be looking at vertical drainage. We have 6 units that need to be covered, so we'd be looking at least at 16, which is under 2-inch size pipe. But note that there's a little 3 right next to 16. We read that footnote, it says except 6-unit traps or water closets. So that means we have to jump to our right to the next size. At 2.5, we still have that same footnote. This means we still have to go yet another column to our right. At 48, we have a footnote 4. Only 4 water closets or 6-unit traps allowed on any vertical pipe or stack, and no more than 3 water closets or 6-unit traps on any horizontal branch or drain. So that footnote does not apply since we only have 2 water closets. So we would be restricted to at least a 3-inch pipe. The answer would be 3 inches for number 2 over on page 21. Next question. Total number of fixture units at B is, now B is just to the right of A. Again, it's drainage pipe for lavatories. You can see by the diagram we have 2 lavatories. Let's find out what the unit values are. We'll look down, we see wash basins. We read carefully, lavatories are in parentheses. For each lavatory we would have a value of 1 fixture unit. Add the 2 together, we get 1 plus 1. We have 2 fixture units. The answer for number 3 is 2 fixture units at B. Next question. Minimum size pipe permitted at B is. Now we're going to be doing the same thing we just did for A. Since we need 2 fixture units, we're going to be looking at 2 under drainage at the bottom chart. There's a note that says except sinks, urinals, and dishwashers. Well, we're not dealing with a urinal or a dishwasher. Are we dealing with a sink? We have to be very specific in the terms here. The code and this manual, when we're talking about sinks, we're dealing with kitchen sinks. Dealing with what we call a sink in a bathroom, it's technically called a lavatory. So remember to make that distinction. Sink is in the kitchen, lavatory is in the bathroom. So in the column, the 1.5-inch column, that footnote, number 2 footnote, does not apply in this situation. So we would be able to use 1.5-inch pipe and be within the code. The answer for number 4 is 1.5 inch. Next question, number 5. The total number of fixture units at C is, and let's take a look and see where C is. C is up toward the top of the diagram, above the water closets and above the lavatories, actually between the two. It's dealing with a horizontal vent pipe, and the question is total number of fixture units that C covers. So let's take a look and see what C is doing. C is venting the lavatories, the bathtubs, and the showers. But note that it is not venting the water closets. The water closets are vented by that vertical pipe in the left of the diagram. So make sure you don't include something that shouldn't be included or miss something that should be included. So we need to add up the fixture units for the lavatories, the bathtubs, and the showers. Let's see what they are by the chart. Start with the lavatories. We have 2 lavatories, 1 fixture unit for each lavatory, so that makes 1 plus 1, 2 for the lavatory area. For the bathtub area, the bathtubs have fixture unit values of 2 each, so we would have 4 total at the bathtubs. So we have 2 for the lavatories, 4 for the bathtubs. That'd be a total of 6 right now. What do we have for the showers? The showers have fixture units of 2 each. We would have 2 plus 2 would have 4. So we have a total fixture unit on the C area pipe of 10 units. 10 would be the answer for number 5. Number 6, what is the minimum size pipe permitted at C? Let's take a look at the vent chart, which is the one on the bottom again. And we're looking at the last line in that chart, horizontal or vertical vents. We're going to need 10 units. So we have 1 in that first line, that's insufficient. 8 in the next line, no, we need 10. And the next line is 24. We only need 10, so 24 is more than enough. And 2 inches would be the answer for number 6, the minimum size pipe needed for that vent line. Number 7, total number of fixture units at D is, and D is the drain area or the drain line that takes care of all of those items on that diagram. So we know from the problem that we just did that the lavatories, the bathtubs, and the showers add up to 10 fixture units. And we know from the earlier problem of the water closets that those are 3 each. So that would be 6. That would be a total of 6 plus 10. We would have 16 fixture units on the D area pipe. So the answer for 7 would be 16. Number 8, the minimum size pipe permitted at D is, so we're looking for 16 in the chart, that lower chart. This is the drainage, and this is a horizontal drain, so we're looking at the middle line there in that chart, horizontal. First we have 1, then the next column at 1.5 inch, we have 1 again. We're looking for 16. 8 is not enough. 14 is not enough. 35 is plenty. Let's see if the footnote pertains to us or not. 4 water closets or 6 unit traps. Any vertical pipe or stack, no more than 3 water closets or 6 unit traps. It does not apply to us. So we would be able to use 3-inch pipe. So the answer for number 8 is 3 inches. Okay, the questions now are going to be dealing with vents, or at least the next 2 questions. Question number 9, the distance x in the drawing to the right there must be at least how many inches? So that's from the horizontal vent pipe to the what we want to call the working maximum of that sink, which would be the overflow level. So you can see that it's at the lip of the sink. What is the minimum that you must put in there? And the answer is 6 inches. Number 10, joints at the roof around pipes must be made watertight by the use of approved what? And the answer is approved flashing. In the roofing trade, they're typically called plumbing boots. Number 11, the maximum vertical distance permitted between the fixture outlet and the trap weir is what? Now, the trap weir is where the trap comes down, goes back up again, and begins to go horizontal. In other words, where the trap begins to drain. That height. So from the fixture to that height, what is the maximum that you're allowed? It's 24 inches. Go ahead and write in 24 inches. Question 12. The water seal for a fixture trap may not be less than, the correct answer is 2 inches. Number 13. The maximum permitted rate of flow through a grease trap is 55 gallons per minute. So if you need something to remember that by, think of a 55-gallon barrel full of water sitting up on top of a sink and emptying through the trap in a minute or more. Let's go on to the next page, and that's page 22. We're going to be looking at number 14, water supply and distribution. The vacuum breaker for a lawn sprinkling system must be installed a minimum of what? Above the surrounding ground and a sufficient number of heads to prevent back pressure and drainage. The answer is 6 inches, minimum of 6 inches. Number 15, when using compressed air to test a water system, hot and cold water piping must be tested at a minimum of what? Should be tested at a minimum of 50 pounds per square inch, or 50 psi. And by the way, it should be done for at least 15 minutes. Sanitary drainage. Number 16. The maximum distance permitted between manholes is what? 300 feet. How can you remember that? It's exactly the length of a football field, goal line to goal line, excluding the end zones. Number 17. The minimum allowed slope for a 3-inch horizontal drain pipe is, and the answer for this is pretty much an everyday number in plumbing, 1/4 inch per foot. And those are the answers for those 17 questions. It's a good review of the California Plumbing Code. Make sure you spend a good amount of time on this section. Let's go on to page 23. We're going to be talking about accessibility requirements. Toilets. I'm pretty much going to have you read through this page on your own. However, for the moment, we're going to circle or at least highlight a couple of important items. And the first one is on the very first line there. Height of a toilet in a public bathroom with handicap access must be at least 17 inches. Maximum 19 inches above the floor. So mark 17 inches and 19 inches. Underneath sinks, the second bullet underneath sinks, I want you to go ahead and highlight that. Handicapped sinks should have wrapped drain pipes. Highlight that, wrapped drain pipes, handicapped sinks. And that's to prevent burns. Showers, go ahead and read the bullets, study the diagram, and note the dimensions. 1/2 inch in that first bullet, 36 inches, so on and so forth. Study the diagrams at the bottom of the page, and let's go on to page 24. Underground Service Alert, or USA. Except in an emergency, every person planning to conduct an excavation must contact the appropriate regional notification center at least 2 working days. Okay, that's important. Let's underline or highlight at least 2 working days, but no more than 14 calendar days before commencing that excavation. And after you have called Underground Service Alert, they will come out, they will mark the ground where the lines are. Note the different colors. There's some 8 different colors. I'm going to choose 4 right now that are most frequently seen. Green for sewer. How can you remember that? Slimy green sewer. Blue for water, clear blue water. Yellow, yellow for gas. And purple, purple for reclaimed water. But read all 8, understand what they refer to, and bring that to the state exam with you, carefully remembered. Let's go on to page 25. Top of page 25, drainage. I'm going to have you highlight that very first sentence. It's the basic definition. A drain is any pipe that carries waste in a building's drainage system. Read through the rest of that paragraph, noting the distinction between a building drain and a building sewer. One is outside the building, that's the building sewer. The other is inside the building for the most part. Read carefully, see exactly where they begin and end. Let's highlight right underneath the diagram. Drainage pipe may be any of the following. It's going to be, it can be cast iron, galvanized steel, galvanized wrought iron, lead, copper, or brass, ABS, PVC, or the last, in some ways most important, any other approved pipe. So these are the common materials, some of course more common than others, some hardly used at all, particularly brass because of its expense. Let's go on to the next page, page 26, vents and traps. Again, first sentence we're going to highlight. A vent is a pipe or opening that provides for the circulation of air in a plumbing system and reduces the pressure on trap seals. Understand carefully what it is used for. Read the rest of that paragraph on your own. And then take a careful look at the chart. Taking up most of the page deals with some 9 different types of vents. I want you to read over on your own these different types of vents, understand the difference between each one, and take particular note of the last one, the yoke vent. Matter of fact, I would like you to highlight that, yoke vent. A pipe section that connects upward from a drain stack to a vent stack in tall buildings to prevent pressure changes in the stacks. And it's required in all buildings 10 stories or higher, and it's required in that situation at every 5th story. Read through the rest of the page, and then let's take a look at page 27. Very first sentence there on the top describes how a trap works. Let's highlight it. The trap works by having an equal amount of atmospheric pressure on both sides, from the air in the building and from the air in the vent. Water seeks its own level in the trap and forms a seal. Read through the rest of those paragraphs there. Take a look at the P-trap diagram. Note where the weir is and where the other sites are. You may see a question or two on the state exam with specific notation regarding the P-trap. Read over on the very bottom diagram. There's a lot of detail in that diagram, but spend a little time figuring out what all the parts are. Page 28, next page, we're going to be talking about water heaters. There's a fair amount of information on this page here about water heaters. I'm going to have you read it on your own. But let's take a quick look at the diagram. And this diagram is a good summary of what's on this page here. Let's start with the seismic braces. Seismic braces, approximately 1/3 from the top, 1/3 from the bottom. Note the minimum inches of space you need between that bottom brace and the controls, at least 4-inch gap there. On the bottom left-hand corner of the diagram, note that the 18 inches minimum refers to the distance in a garage between the floor and the level of where a spark or a flame is existent. The next number, 36 inches max, that refers to the length of the connector. From the valve to the hot water heater, your maximum space there, typically a flexible connector, is 36 inches. And up at the top of the hot water heater, we have a 12-inch max where you connect water heater to the existing cold water supply or hot water supply. You want to have those unions, those connections, within 12 inches or less. Finally, the temperature pressure relief valve, one is required on a hot water heater. And look at the bottom of that pipe, there are no threads, no trap, that is also a requirement. And let's go on to the next page, page 29, storm drainage. I'm going to read some of that paragraph, and then in the middle of the paragraph we're going to do some highlighting. Storm drains are used to channel excess water away from residential and commercial buildings to prevent flooding during inclement weather. All roofs, paved areas, yards, courts, and courtyards must be supplied with a storm drainage system. Now here's where I want to highlight. Storm water should be drained into a separate storm sewer system and kept apart from the sanitary drainage systems. Read the rest of that paragraph on your own. And in regard to underground drains and roof drains and sizing, I will also have you read that on your own and understand what's being said there. Let's go on to page 30. Fuel gas, or propane, butane, or natural gas. For the first half of that page, I'll ask you to read that on your own. Take a look at the diagram in the middle of the page. Then immediately underneath that diagram, there's some important lines there. Let's highlight those. Pipes to transport fuel gas are installed both above and below ground. Gas pipes can be made of wrought iron, steel, yellow brass, or type K, L, or ACR copper tubing. PE, polyethylene, can be used underground in outdoor locations. It's an important piece to remember for the state exam. Read through the rest of the page there, and let's go on to the top of page 31. Test and inspections. Gas piping should be tested once the entire system is in place, and if any leaks are found, the defective pipes must be repaired or replaced and then retested. And let's highlight this next sentence. Gas piping is typically tested at 10 psig for 15 minutes. The other 4 paragraphs on that page, again, I'll ask you to read on your own. And let's go on to page 32. Medical gas and vacuum systems. Now, it's quite likely that on the state exam you'll see a few questions in regard to this subject. So we want to take a careful look at this. Read that first paragraph on your own. On the second paragraph, let's highlight the first sentence. Medical gas systems must be piped with approved seamless type K or L copper tubing. Copper to copper joints must be brazed without flux. The reason for no flux is to avoid contamination of the pipe. Read through the next couple of paragraphs, and the chart on the bottom, go ahead and read through on your own, noting the differences and the requirements. And let's get on to page 33, private sewage disposal systems, or a septic system. And a septic system is installed typically in a rural area or an area where the public sewer system has not yet been extended to. Let's take a look at the diagram. Diagram's a good basic explanation of how a septic system works. Water comes into the septic tank where the solids separate and fall to the bottom. The water flows out toward the top of the tank and into the septic field. The next main item there is the distribution box, and that distributes the water into, in this particular case, 4 what's called leach lines or drainage lines. And those lines allow water to seep through the pipes. The pipes are not porous, but they have open areas in the pipes to allow the water to seep into the field and to be absorbed into the field. Now, note, this is an important item, and let's highlight this. Before installation, the soil must be subjected to a percolation test. In other words, how fast will the water go into the ground? Read through the rest of that paragraph, and at the very end of that paragraph, let's highlight the soil must be capable of absorbing a minimum of 0.83 gallons per square foot in 24 hours, but should not absorb more than 5.12 gallons per square foot in 24 hours. So the range is 0.83 to 5.12. Commit that to memory. You may well see a question on the state exam. Read through the rest of that, and then make sure that you take some time to study the 2 charts on the bottom of the page. Where can you locate the disposal system? How close to various items on the property? And the next chart, the smaller chart to the right, how big does that system have to be? 750 gallons up to 1,500 gallons in this particular chart. Going on to page 34, you'll find some plumbing symbols. Read over those, make sure you understand what they indicate. And that concludes the general knowledge portion of our manual. Thank you very much.